Before starting.
So we'll call the meeting to order. Looks like all the committee members are here. Approval of the minutes from October 2nd. Supervisor Morehouse, is your second? Supervisor Bjork, seconds. Any additions or corrections? Uh, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Opposed, say no. Minutes are approved. We don't have any public comments, I don't think, today. No one here for that. We don't have a public hearing. We do have staff reports. Why are we? Where are we here exactly? uh, so we do have a pretty short agenda, unusually. Um, so let's go to number 7 then. This is placed on the agenda by myself and with sort of at the request of Supervisor Bjork. And I think the idea was that we had at our last zoning meeting, we had some elements of potential spot zoning that we addressed and decided to not enforce. And I think Gary expressed some concern about that.
Make sure you turn your microphone. Make sure you turn your microphone on, Gary, when you speak.
Your mic.
Oh. Yes. Oh, but you're
Sure.
Oh, we're sure. You have another?
No, I know what it says, pretty much. But I was kind of disappointed in it, except that the people that came to speak on it, they were kind of left out in the cold. You know, they didn't have a chance. I mean, 8, 9 years ago, when we had the brand new like zoning, we all signed up for what zone we thought we'd be like living in. And that was all like, you know, like general ag. Then all of a sudden it comes in, well, we have a little 8-acre chunk we're going to put right in the middle of general ag. And that didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, because of our committee, it's planning, resource and development, but the planning part, you don't just put something that has a potential conflict right out in the middle. And I got a farm that's 160 acres, that's maybe a half mile away from this, so I know exactly where it is and everything. Plus, I didn't talk to nobody. But I just thought that the people that are there, that signed up for it and say, yep, I'm comfortable with GA. And then all of a sudden, a guy comes in and wants to make more money by selling more lots. It just didn't seem like that was the right way to go, in my opinion. But I've been wrong before, but that's kind of what it come down to. I'd like to just have a little more, the people that already live there, that they have a choice, that they don't have to be part of or live right next to a residential area, when it wasn't like that when they signed up for that. Because I know when we done for the town of Colfax, we had several public meetings where people could come in, they look at the map and say, yep, this is kind of the way I want it, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, so. But maybe it won't turn out that way, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I thought it was it was worth us having some discussion about how we understand how we're going to apply that rule going forward, so that we can have thoughtful discussions about it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
just to refresh our memory, one lot was to be developed, is that correct? One additional.
So kind of, yes. So the lot would essentially, his plan, and I believe he's turned in a CSM since this was approved, just to take that one 6.1 acre piece and split that in 2.
Right.
But there was like an illegal land division, so there is like property remaining that's still GA, but hasn't been cleaned up yet.
Correct.
So.
All right, thank you.
I wonder, Ann, could you talk a little bit about how you view spot zoning and think about applying it?
Sure. So, you know, when when Supervisor Bjork came to the office, I think we had a good talk about it, and I totally understand his concerns that, we talked about it, it was, discussed, but maybe, looking at it like moving forward, this is something that I try to address in my staff reports, but, maybe we could be adding more information to make sure that the discussion is covering everything and making everybody feel comfortable with the decision. So I definitely agree that it's worth going over, especially moving forward. I mean, so my thoughts on it, and we'd kind of talked about it, and I did address it in the staff report, but, just to add to that, spot zoning is a really tricky one. There's a lot of like legal stuff that you can look at, and I did include some stuff in the packet too. Most of the time, spot zoning is when, basically it's, when you think about it in the most easy sense, it's taking a piece of property, a small area, and changing the zoning designation, and it doesn't really it's not the same zoning designation as the surrounding area. If you just look at it as that, I can see why, alarm bells go off. And I think this committee's done a good job of saying, catching things like this. So in order to make sure that it's not spot zoning, you have to look at other factors like what's the plan for the area? What are the uses that are actually happening out there? Does this fit with those uses that are, like Gary had said, is this compatible with what's already going on out there? And when I looked at it, and I think I included a map in the report as well, there's a lot of single family development out there. And that use is allowed in GA and it's allowed in R1. And the intent of the property by splitting it was to continue that single family development. In my mind, R1 is created for single family development. There's some other things that you can do, but all of it is just supporting single family development. When you get into GA, there are so many more uses that you can do. I mean, you open it up to single family residential, but then you can also have, a duplex if you're a farm family, or a lot of agricultural uses. So you get to do more in GA. It's a little more flexible, but the difference is density. Density is calculated in GA and it's not in R1. So that's kind of, to me, it's not a big step, I guess, between R1 and GA in my mind. And then when we looked at, we're looking at factors when we analyze this, the suitability of the new zoning suggestion, and then like, what's the public benefit to this? How does it align with the comprehensive plan, and what are the surrounding zoning and uses right now? So when we go through those, the property, when we looked at the soils and we did our environmental analysis, it's non-prime farmland. It has steep slopes up to 45 degrees, and it's really not suitable for much agricultural use, at least large scale. However, it could accommodate like a really limited amount of residential development, because when we looked at it, it had small areas of like no slope, and they were a little bit more open. When we look at the public benefit, we were looking at essentially, how can we meet the community's needs by doing this rezone? And that would be by helping with housing and providing a public benefit there. So it's not just for that property owner, it's also helping the public. And then it did align with like low density development and ag use of the area. So, those properties can still be used for ag. There's nothing that says they can't anymore, but now they can be split. That's really the only difference that happened with R1. And then when we looked at the surrounding zoning and the uses, there was already low density residential development. There was a house across the street. There's another house just down the road. This area does fit a pattern of single family development with like larger areas of land. So I didn't see any conflict there. So I think that like the general assessment, at least that I had, and I feel like when we discussed it in the meeting, was that, changing it to R1 is still following the county's comprehensive plan. It's enhancing housing supply. It's compatible with the existing residential development. It's not going to deter it's not going to take any farmland out of production. And I think the one thing that was kind of still out there was the driveway placement. I know that property owners in the area and neighbors were really concerned about traffic safety. And ultimately, this is something that it's a town road. The town will have to decide if and where a driveway could be placed for those properties. And I think that the overall feel of that was that, we can trust them to be thoughtful and strategic about that placement. So that's kind of how that one, I felt we put it through the ringer for spot zoning. And I think everyone should be treated they're all treated this way. But I definitely understand the concerns with it. And I think we should definitely pay attention to this stuff more in the future. And yeah, we can certainly do that. Does anybody have any questions for me about it?
Gary?
My only question would be, that a lot of these people think that by having a little extra land, they have a little more freedom to do out there and that. I mean, and are we sure it's only gonna be like, one more house, or could they get like 2 more houses plus the other house, or 3 houses in there? Because it is pretty flat up on top,
Yeah.
you know?
So I think this was originally looked at, I believe it was Tammy Traxler in our office. The person had come in and they were talking about, developing the area. And she was seeing red flags as far as like, there's so much slope out there. There's not a lot of buildable area, like not really seeing like the viability of doing some land divisions out there. And then later it was found that there was an illegal land division. So, I know that they've split it into 2. Potentially they could split it more since it is R1 now. Build more houses, but again, they would need to get driveways and access for all of these lots. They would need to have enough room for like septic systems and replacement systems. And with all those slopes and the soil types out there, that was really limiting. So the land was really limiting in general for residential development, which is probably why it hasn't been developed yet. And I think that's still going to be an issue for anyone who does purchase those properties. Does that answer your question? I can
Pretty much so.
keep going. Okay.
The way it goes in there and that, but would have made more sense to have it like surveyed first, so we kind of know, yeah, this is the way the lots are gonna look, not,
Mhm.
just pass it and it hasn't even been surveyed yet.
Yeah. So I think you're saying like you'd be more comfortable if like the preliminary CSM was part of like the rezone
So we kinda
consideration.
know exactly how it's gonna be, like,
Uh-huh.
are they gonna put 1 more home in there or 2 more homes in there?
Yeah.
Like they're not, I mean, that's something, this is history, but
Mhm.
just in the future, it's something to think about.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I know we've had some that have done that. I can't remember. There was a woman that was splitting a GA property she wanted to split it into 3 lots, one for herself and one for each child. And I believe that one, she did submit a preliminary. So you were able to see like, okay, here's what we're kind of agreeing to here. Like, here's your plan. It's a little more concrete rather than they're just making promises and we're not holding them to it. Yeah, I understand that for sure.
But thank you for explaining it better.
Yeah, no problem.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Mike?
I thought the material you gave us was great. Summarized it nice and your explanation now kind of helps fill it in a little bit. Because we have talked about spot zoning on and off. I know the township has also. So good job with this. It wasn't so long and complicated that we didn't want to read it. Yeah, so that's good. Thanks.
Thanks.
Michael, Mike, anyhow, I had a really good list, but I thought I better not use it, so. Well, sometimes you get, when you're home doing nothing else, you kind of sit and start writing down stuff. I thought, well, maybe I better go easier. You ever have stuff like that? happen?
Yes, I have fortunately avoided saying things many times, and unfortunately, I haven't avoided saying things sometimes. But I don't know, I'm curious if you've got other stuff. Huh.
Yeah, I think one of the sort of baseline considerations is we have, as a county, recently placed a heavy emphasis on the need for housing and to be uh, sort of cognizant of not putting obstacles in the way of housing development. And we, as a committee, need to be careful to do that, but at the same time, be clear about the spot zoning implications.
Thank you.
I'm glad Gary brought it up, and thank you, Ann, for looking into it, and everybody.
And on this extension, University of Michigan extension document that you sent, the criteria at the very end, I thought were extremely helpful going forward in our considerations. So it was extremely helpful. Thank you.
With that in mind, I was looking at the same thing, and that would be nice to include if we do have anything that comes forward. If you could remember to have this and show it to us, if we have something comes forward that might be considered spot zoning.
Yeah, I agree. Even like the wording of these, questions is really well done. Yeah, because, generally we go through the criteria and spot zoning is more or less like covered by that, but it's not actually called out in our criteria. And I think I agree that this would be really a good tool to use, and I would be happy to put it in the next staff report.
Okay. Anything else? I think staff has to contribute. Okay. Well, thank you all for that discussion, and Gary for bringing it up. Foreclosed property sale. Is that you, Nick?
I guess so. Yeah, we have, this is a property up on, on County Highway W, north of Colfax. Almost to 64, I think, about a mile and a half or so south of there. The owner passed away, and the property was taken through in rem tax foreclosure. We had an appraisal company come and give a value of the committee. This committee had, I think the value was set at $135,000 as a minimum bid. So we did our publication, we did a sealed bid sale, and we received one bid from Daniel Kluver. The bid was for $140,000, which it exceeds the minimum amount set by the committee based on the appraised value. And so our recommendation is for the committee to approve sale of this property to Daniel Kluver. I thought it was Daniel until I got down here. Now I'm not sure. I apologize. Anyway, it exceeds the minimum bid amount by $5,000, and so we're recommending that the committee approve the sale.
So how long do we have to keep the money like in the bank for 5 years? Is that,
Well, the changes in state law require us to find potential errors. Having had some experience with the previous owner years ago in medical assistance issue, I believe he's from like Long Island, New York. So finding errors may not be easy, but we're going to try. there is, the tax, the total amount of tax due on the property right now is almost $20,000. So that'll be recouped, right away. And then there are expenses that the county has incurred in foreclosing, and there will probably be some expense relating to trying to find an heir to send the money to. If we can't find anyone, then it gets transferred over to the unclaimed funds program
That's
of
the state?
the state, yeah. And then it has to be, it has to be maintained for as long as that requires. I think that's 10 years, or I don't know.
Are we under any obligation to make sure that the heater is working in there or the water is flushed out or anything?
No.
We just sell it?
All of that stuff's been, it has no electricity, at least not that I'm aware of. I was actually just up there yesterday morning to have a look and make sure that everything was okay. It appears there were some squatters living in there and somebody was ransacking the place, so there's garbage and
Yeah.
things. It's really hard to walk through without a silage fork, to be honest with you. So, I actually thought about bringing one out there. But anyway, yeah, there's no electricity. It's the house, and then there's a nice pole shed just next to it. But we don't have an obligation to ensure that any utilities are connected or anything like that.
It's just, pay any, like the back taxes, any foreclosure that we might, and the rest will just sit in the bank or it goes right to the state then?
No, we have to try to find somebody to give the proceeds, the remaining proceeds to. And the law is not very clear on what kind of efforts have to be made, whether it's a, Herculean effort or, checking the phone book, for people with the same last name. It lies somewhere in between, certainly, and we'll try to do the most obvious, most likely methods, especially easy ones. A lot of times you can type someone's name into Google and you can find a website that lists people who may be related to them, and some of them sell the information, some of them don't. But we're going to try to do whatever we can to find people who can receive the remaining proceeds. Then if we can't, then it has to be retained for a period of time and then transferred to the unclaimed funds.
Yeah, thank you. So as far as we're concerned, we just have to have it appraised so that we're not looking, according to state law, we have to have it appraised, I assume, and ask for that amount?
Correct. And that's
Okay.
already been done. The committee
Right.
has set the value, and now we've had the sale.
Right,
And we
right.
had one bid that qualified. I think it may have been the only bid.
So we really have no big incentive to sell any property, not just this one, for profit or to make a lot of money for the heirs or anything else. Like we just by law have to go according to the appraisal.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. And not only that, I mean, one of the other changes in the law, and I've been working on some amendments to the NREM ordinance. There's a timeline. When counties take these properties now, they're actually required to sell them within a certain time period in order to fulfill the financial obligation to give proceeds to next of kin or heirs, beneficiaries or heirs, I guess is what they call them.
So what expenses are we allowed to deduct from that?
Well, we hire, the law statute requires that we hire an attorney to act as a guardian ad litem. So the guardian ad litem goes out and will make contact with every landowner to try to determine whether or not they need assistance, and basically to determine whether they're competent. If people have issues with competency, then they're entitled to get an attorney, or the guardian ad litem can can do something. And we have had cases over the years where it's been determined after we did foreclosure that the person who didn't pay their taxes had, banker's boxes filled with mail sitting on their kitchen table and didn't know what to do with them because uh, they weren't competent. And so we work then with the family and make sure they get their property back. But the purpose of the guardian ad litem is to try to prevent all that from needing to be done in the first instance. So we have a guardian ad litem fee. We have filing fees. We have to publish in the newspaper. There have been years where our ads have taken up, like before the Dunn County News went to its smaller format even, the smaller dimensional format. We've had ads that take up 2.5, 3 pages in the legals, which costs money. The appraisal costs money. We have to do a title report before we do the foreclosure. We get a title report so that we know what secured interests we need to put on notice that this is happening. And staff time can be included. There are a lot of expenses that the county incurs in doing a foreclosure.
Anything else? Maybe a motion to approve accept the bid?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the bid of $140,000 from Ms. or Mr. Kluver.
Is there a second? Monica seconds.
Mm-mm.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Let's see. Land and Water Conservation Board election.
Morning.
Please lead us through this.
All right.
Morass.
Good morning, everyone. In your packet, I tried to include some additional information regarding this, I guess, change in format for electing members to the State Land and Water Conservation Board. So a real brief background to kind of summarize. We as Dunn County, both Land Conservation Committee members and Land and Water Conservation Division staff are members of the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association. That association provides a number of benefits for both supervisors and staff through training, advocacy for state budgets. One of the big ones consistently is always bringing funds through the joint allocation between DNR and DACCAP to support county conservation staff and the programs that we administer, particularly related to state administrative code that's passed down for us to implement on behalf of the state. And in return, there's sources of funding that our state association helps lobby for. Those funds are ultimately allocated through a process in the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection under the oversight of the State Land and Water Conservation Board. And through statute, the State Association of Wisconsin Land and Water, what I previously mentioned that represents all of us, has the ability to, or through statute, to elect 3 representatives on that State Land and Water Conservation Board. They must be Land Conservation Committee members. In the past, this type of election always took place at the State Land and Water Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association annual meeting in March. What has been happening is a candidate will run, election will take place during the annual conference. A person will get voted in. And because it's voted in March, spring election comes along at a local level, that individual might not be reelected to the Land Conservation Committee. So while the time frame from when they're elected on the Land and Water Conservation Board, their term doesn't really begin until January of the following year. So there's potentially 9 months here where there's kind of this waiting period, and in that time frame, a local election could result in where that individual is no longer eligible to serve in that capacity on the state board. So in an effort to address that situation is where I'm helping facilitate this conversation today and a vote by all of you to cast on behalf of Dunn County to represent land and water conservation board individuals. So that way their terms can line up and we don't have this kind of repeating cycle of lack of representation on the land and water board or additional effort that would need to get people into those situations. So I will share my screen just as a reminder of what the ask is for today. And basically, there have been, so we as Land Conservation Committee supervisors and staff are members of the West Central Area Land and Water Conservation Association. So a sub-area association within the broader state one. Our West Central area did not propose or elect or nominate, I should say, a candidate to represent the state on the Land and Water Conservation Board. But other areas did. So there's 5 candidates. In your packet, there were some links in that PDF I provided. Hopefully you had a chance to look at those. Because you are on the Land Conservation Committee, you're likely are on a listserv through our state association, so you may have seen some of these emails in the past, but I want to make sure you had the right information. So there are 5 candidates. You're being asked to vote for 3. And I have been provided a unique election code that I will enter in your selection at the end of this meeting to cast basically Dunn County Land Conservation Committee's vote. I'm hopeful that you all had a chance to read through the bios and watch the videos, just in the interest of time and efficiency. But if you would like, I certainly have the ability to pull up those bios, play the videos of those candidates. But a real quick recap, these are the candidates, Rebecca Clark, not the Rebecca Clark that ran for Cook for 3rd Congressional District, but Yogesh Chawla, Mike Hofberger, Monty Osterman, and Terry White. I guess with that, I will turn it back to you if you'd like to have discussions or conversations. Otherwise, I have prepared some paper ballots that I can hand out and we
Okay,
can.
let's just
proceed
see.
with that.
Anyone have any questions? Diane?
Well, and my memory is probably flawed. Have we ever done this before? It's just, I was sort of surprised at,
Yeah,
I mean, I understand the process and the need, but
Do people get are you all on the listserv for the Land and Water
Yeah.
Conservation? Okay, yeah. But it's like, why?
I know.
Yeah.
I'm sort of at the why.
So
It's been a short coming, I think, that we haven't maybe talked about this more.
So this, yes, this is something new. The past practice was to cast these ballots or make elections, a vote basically at the annual conference in March. And unless committee members have been there to cast that vote, we don't get a vote. So staff cannot vote in this situation. So at least in my term here in Dunn County and for the many years in Pepin County, depending on interest and capacity of Land Conservation Committee members, they may or may not have attended the annual conference. Therefore, if you haven't attended, you wouldn't have been participating in this type of an election. I think it's interesting that it is maybe coming to this format because it allows for some more engagement on the topic rather than requiring the attendance of an annual conference. But I also would encourage you to attend the annual conference too.
I have gone to it a couple times and it's really good. Very good.
Could one of those-
Sorry, Gary.
Could one of those people be from like FSA? Could they be part of that meeting too or not?
Correct. So there has been some changes in statute regarding Farm Service Agency representation. So we may have talked about this in the last year or so, but the Land Conservation Committee typically has some statutory requirements about representation of its members. And one of those requirements is that a representative that serves on the Farm Service Agency board or committee is to be appointed or sits on the county's land conservation committee. And that's how we've operated for many years, even since I've been here. Jim Thompson, I'm sorry, Jim, that's maybe because he hasn't shown up, was the Farm Service Agency representative. In recent year and a half, I guess, maybe, the state or federal Farm Service Agency has changed their tune as to their level of acceptance or allowing Farm Service Agency committee members to serve on the local county land conservation committee. They felt it was being portrayed in a way that this individual was representing the Farm Service Agency, which is something that they did not agree with. Even though that's not how the statute was written, it was basically written in a way that tried to encourage an agricultural individual that's engaged in agriculture to be on a land conservation committee to maintain that consistency. And it was convenient for many years to have an FSA representative do that, but they weren't necessarily representing FSA. That statute has now changed. So an agricultural representative is basically allowed at large now, which is something that we probably should talk about in the future as far as whether we want to pursue that, but it does not require that it be an FSA representative anymore.
Okay, so you have ballots. So let's say we all have 3 votes.
You have 3 votes. Yep.
And then how do you want to take it from there?
So you can check who you want. We can bring it over here. Hopefully I can have some assistance, but we can
Okay,
tally them
you can
quick.
tally, and if we have
And I have,
3 have it,
yep. And if
otherwise we have to revote.
and I'm prepared for that.
Okay.
But not for a third revote. So,
Just,
if you wouldn't mind handing those down. There should be 10 there. You don't, obviously only need 5 right now, but.
you see it? Everybody see that? Back, hold them and pass them back. We'll have our.
All right. Bear with me.
I was thinking India. Not sure. I think so too.
You should talk with Chase about what changes would be needed to it. It'd be small, probably be about 4 or 5 words. When the US attorney came out with his opinion that they say that basically the state law can't require the federal government to be represented in a local committee. That wasn't the purpose at all. Our long history here in Dunn County is that this person has never bothered to show up for 99 meetings anyway. So we just.
And I was, please.
Voted in. We have Monty Osterman receiving 5 votes. Rebecca Clark receiving 4 votes. And then Mike Hofberger, Terry White, and Yogesh Chawla all receiving 2.
So we have to choose from them.
So we should, choose from the 2 or the 3 remaining.
Color, please distribute the ballots.
Yep, so they are Terry White, Mike Hofberger, and Yogesh Chawla.
We vote for one.
Vote for 1, please.
No,
A write-in.
Should have made one more ballot round. We have a tie between Mike Hofberger and Yogesh Chawla. So. Can we reuse a back side of these
Sure,
quick?
yeah.
I was a little nervous the day after to do this.
I know, right? Timing is not auspicious.
and what are the names again?
Name, yep, I'll get on the mic. Please select one between Mike Hofberger and Yogesh Chawla. Yogesh Chawla received the most votes. So your selection would be Yogesh Chawla, Monty Osterman, and Rebecca Clark. And that will be the vote I will cast on your behalf. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Chase, for pulling that together. Let's see, anything else on the agenda? Any announcements?
Can I ask a stupid question,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman? And for Corp Council while we're here, is there a published list of all of the tax foreclosed properties in the county? Or do we just see them kind of one at a time or two at a time, or?
There isn't a published list. We do have files for them all. Some of them are, I mean, I think we're always trying to evaluate and bring them forward to, for the committee to sell. Some of the properties are, they're technically their properties, but they're underwater because of the Cedar Falls Dam being built, or, I mean, a few years ago, we had a parcel down in O'Galley that was, I think, a little bit bigger than 1 square foot. And it all came from railroad deeds that missed a spot, errors. And so we have a lot of those properties. We have the famous, the county highway department came and sort of smoothed out the curve a little bit, turned it from a 15-mile-an-hour corner to a 30-mile-an-hour corner. So some of the ag land on the inside of the corner goes away and a little bit more goes on the outside, but the inside owner still owns that 0.2 or 0.1 acres, and they just don't pay the taxes, and the person on the outside of the curve isn't interested in buying the property or even receiving it for free. So we've got a bunch of properties that are kind of hard to sell. But we're always trying to process them. With the changes in the law now, I think you can expect to see that they're brought forward sooner, and the dispositions might be I don't know, we may have some strange dispositions, but we'll at least have dispositions. Um, we don't, when we sell, when we foreclose, we we collect up all or as many of the properties as we can to bring them to the committee. One of the reasons that you only have one property to look at right now is that we've developed a very good outreach program, working with the county treasurer. We spend a lot of time calling people and bugging them. We would rather have them pay their taxes than take their property. And so we have a really good outreach process that we use. And we're doing the in-rem foreclosures now almost annually, maybe a little bit more, 13 or 14 months. But we're doing them more regularly and more routine. And so people who are habitual anticipate it, they pay their taxes. With our outreach, we're getting people to pay taxes and getting that number of properties down. We'll start out with, let's say, 85 parcels. And sometimes we can get that down to 7 or 8 parcels by the time we're in court to take judgment. So the list is shorter for a number of reasons, but we generally try to get all of the properties that aren't strange, to the committee for valuation and then sell. So, but if you'd like a list, we could prepare one. Like, we have a couple of outlots within the city of Menominee that are retention ponds. And the developer, instead of creating an ownership interest among all of the residents of the subdivision, retained ownership of the outlots. And of course, they went out of business and they quit paying the taxes. And now, so our plan is to work with the city of Menominee and just have the city take them over there. But I mean, that's just an example, another example, I guess, of the sort of strange or awkward properties that we have. Yep.
Just if I could, Nick, on a kind of related issue. So when you have a situation where, say, a street has been vacated or a street has been forgotten about, and people assume that that's now part of their property, has been for 30 or 40 years, what's the procedure for?
Well, the law isn't entirely supportive of this strategy, but
It's all right, you're retiring.
well, yeah. I guess I would say I don't care. We have had lots, 66 feet wide and
Right.
400 feet long, and it's someone's driveway. But it was created as a separate lot and it's been lost in foreclosure. And we tell the people, you need to buy this. And I mean, in my opinion, getting it back on the tax roll is a good outcome. And so we'll approach people and just say, we want to sell this property to you. We'll give you a really good price for it. And if they fight us too hard, maybe we'll just give it to them. But I've let my secrets out now.
Yeah.
Because we actually, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, we had somebody who saw an opportunity. They bought this driveway. And I really believe the person's intention was to put up a barricade and prevent the owner of the property that is back off the road from using it in order to leverage that to get money. And the person who bought this little strip ended up losing it in tax foreclosure again a couple years later. So it didn't work out.
Anything else? Any other announcements? All right, then we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Nice. On Monday.